All right, guys, we've got some stuff on the SEC moving to a 9-game scheduling format. Thank God, right? I mean, I cannot believe that they're even still discussing with the college football playoff moving to 12 teams, with the SEC expanding. They're still discussing an 8-game conference format, basically meaning 3 of your non-conference games are completely cream puffs. We're trying to remove that stuff. That's why we expanded to a 12-team playoff to allow some of these SEC teams wiggle room. In the event that they lose multiple games, they would still have a chance to make the playoff. Saban is angry at the 3 opponents that Alabama would be facing permanently every single year in a 3-6-6 scheduling model. Quote, they're giving us Tennessee, Auburn, and LSU. I don't know how they come to that. Nick, if you think that's bad, you should see the rumored permanent opponents Ohio State has. Ohio State apparently is going to be facing Michigan, Penn State, and USC every year. I'm not sure why Saban is so angry. Tennessee's had one good year. Auburn's been a dumpster fire. And LSU... yes, they always have elite talent, but it really seems like LSU is kind of underwhelming 3 out of every 4 years. And then, of course, they have like a crazy good year where they go to the national championship or even win it. But like the idea that this is some gauntlet for Alabama, Tennessee, Auburn, and LSU every year, and you're complaining when Ohio State gets Michigan, Penn State, and USC, really? I don't know. But this is kind of just a mock that I wanted to go through. And then we do have another article on the situation surrounding the Big 12 and the Pac-12. Could the Big 12 snipe any schools from the Pac-12 in the event the Pac-12 collapses? But taking a look at this, you can see Alabama, their 3 permanent rivals, Auburn, Tennessee, LSU. I don't know why Saban is so angry. I don't think that's a gauntlet at all. I mean, they're 3 quality teams, sure, but I don't see that as a gauntlet. Arkansas faces Texas, Texas A&M, and Missouri. Auburn faces Alabama and Georgia. That's rough. But then they do get Vanderbilt. All right, they get Vanderbilt to even the odds a little bit. Florida gets Georgia, Tennessee, Kentucky. That's a tough one. Georgia gets Florida, Auburn, South Carolina. That's easy, man. Oh, my God. Georgia gets Florida, Auburn, and SC. Come on. This is not confirmed. This is just like this is a mock. Kentucky gets Tennessee, Florida, Mississippi State. LSU gets Bama, Ole Miss, A&M. That could be tough. Ole Miss gets Mississippi State, LSU, and Oklahoma. That could be tough. Mississippi State gets Ole Miss, Kentucky, and South Carolina. Missouri gets Oklahoma, Arkansas, and Vanderbilt. Ooh, you gotta like that if you're Missouri. Oklahoma, the newcomer, gets Texas, Missouri, and Ole Miss. That's pretty balanced. South Carolina gets Georgia, Vandy, and Mississippi State. That's pretty balanced. Tennessee gets Kentucky, Florida, and Bama. Texas gets Oklahoma, A&M, and Arkansas. A&M gets Texas, Arkansas, and LSU. And then Vanderbilt gets Auburn, South Carolina, and Missouri. Those are just projected possible 3 permanent rivals. Nothing is confirmed. That is just kind of a guess. We'll see what ends up happening there. And then we do have this new article that released. Folks inside the Big 12 believe they'll land Pac-12 schools as soon as this month. That is the big news right now. Folks inside the Pac-12 insist no one is jumping unless it's a really bad TV deal. And by the way, the current expectation on this TV deal, it doesn't seem necessarily bad. I mean, this article is talking about $31 million per year. Of course, there's a massive incentive if you're Oregon and Washington to go to the Big Ten, but the idea that some of these other teams like Arizona and Arizona State would leave to go to the Big 12 if you're getting $31 million to stay in the Pac-12. Well, the Big 12 is getting like $1 more million or 2 more. It just doesn't make much sense. But in the article, you can see the Baylor athletic director saying, I don't think any of us are trying to dismantle the Pac-12. If there's an opportunity and whatever their TV deal comes to fruition and those institutions decide that it's not good for them, then the Big 12 will be ready. And that probably is as simple as I can say it. So yes, they're not going to come out and say we're aggressively coaxing these teams to join. But again, this might be a situation where the Big Ten destroys the Pac-12. The Big 12 isn't going to have much of an effect on this if these TV numbers are actually 31 million. Now, if it's less than 31 million and significantly less, because we were hearing rumors about 26 million, maybe even as lower than that, then there might be an incentive for some of these teams to want to look around like an Arizona State, Colorado, and Utah, possibly try and get a better deal in the Big 12. But if they're getting 31 million, the reason the Big Ten would be the one to destroy the Pac-12 is because even if you get 31 million, which is like best case scenario right now for the Pac-12's TV deal, it still doesn't come anywhere close to what Washington and Oregon would get going to the Big Ten, even if they had to take a little bit less money, have kind of a newcomer fee to the Big Ten, you're still at like 50 or 55 million, and that's on the low end. I mean, that Big Ten contract eventually in the mid, once you get to like 2030, you're talking about possibly 90 million per year, 100 million. It gets crazy. And then you also do have the Big 12 commissioner in deep discussions with Gonzaga. So possibly trying to get Gonzaga to join the basketball conference on that. And that league is already a gauntlet as it is. Every single year, the Big 12 in terms of basketball with Kansas and really some of those other schools, they're always so good. If they add Gonzaga, that is a total powerhouse conference. I mean, it already is, but it gets even more crazy. Since these expansion courtships began last summer, Yormark has been confident he can convince his target that the future is brighter in the Big 12. He ramped up the pressure by jumping the Pac-12 and reaching an early extension with ESPN and Fox that will make his members more money than they do now with Texas and Oklahoma. That agreement is right around $32 million, so that is the Big 12's agreement. You take a look at the current projected Pac-12 average value. This is being reported by a consulting firm. 31 million per school, barely less than the Big 12's new TV deal. Now there are a few factors to note. The Big 12's deal is with ESPN and I believe a combination of ESPN and Fox. The Pac-12 is having big issues in terms of getting a deal done with ESPN. Fox, apparently, from what I've heard, is not involved at all. So this could be another thing to where if you're a team, you really do not want a streaming-heavy deal. But it's looking more and more like the Pac-12 because the Big 12 took the prerogative. They went out, they got the deal done early. The Pac-12 is kind of left behind and fending for themselves, and maybe ESPN wants to do that 10:30 Eastern window to get live football within that time frame. Other than that, you could be looking at one game a week on ESPN and everything else on streaming. That would be very unattractive for a team like Utah, for Arizona State, Colorado, really for any of those teams. It makes you irrelevant. At this day and age, to where we're kind of in the influx between streaming and cable, it's not like that at all when it comes to live sports. Live sports, you go to a bar, it's all cable. It's only cable. And it's going to be cable. Look at the Big Ten's massive deal. They're signing with Fox, with NBC, with CBS. They're not latching on and giving up their rights to Apple TV. There's a reason they're still going with the big boys, because even though streaming's become so big, streaming is more so for TV shows and things that you can go back and watch. It's not good for live events. And I have nothing against streaming. You can stream, it's cheaper, I get it. Getting cable. If you're in an apartment, yeah, good luck getting cable. It just doesn't work. You got to stream. I totally get that. But in terms of the bigger picture, latching yourself on, giving up your rights to a streaming service is a very risky proposition that I'm guessing these schools, especially schools of the prestige of Oregon and Washington, they're simply not going to stand for this, right? And this is the whole idea of the Big Ten being the ones to go ahead and destroy the Pac-12, and we've already seen it started with the additions of USC, UCLA, Oregon, and Washington. They're not going to care if this new deal is for $31 million, $32, $35 million. They can get way more going to the Big Ten, where they're not in bed with streaming. If you're Oregon, would you rather be on NBC at 7:30 or Apple TV at 4:30 in the afternoon? Which one would you, it's not even a question. This is not a question. And, you could even, there's the argument to where it's like, oh, why not just stay in the Pac-12? It's going to be easier in terms of the schedule than going to the gauntlet that is the Big Ten, where you're facing Ohio State, Michigan, Penn State, all these teams. But with the 12-team playoff, that should mitigate some of those concerns, because you're going to have teams lose probably 3 games and still get into the playoff as an 11 or a 12 seed. In terms of that. So there's a lot of stuff going on right now when it comes to the Big 12. I think there's 2 things you hope. You hope the deal is as low as possible in terms of money. Now, the consulting firm's saying $31 million. That's basically right on par with what the Big 12 got, which should not be very surprising. Right now, when you compare the Big 12 and the Pac-12, even without USC and UCLA, the 2 most valuable teams in either of those conferences, when it comes to ratings, when it comes to overall value, popularity, it's Oregon and Washington. Those are the 2 most popular teams after all the realignment, after the SEC takes Texas and Oklahoma, after the Big Ten takes their schools. So it's understandable. The Big 12 is certainly deeper, but, they're probably going to get roughly the same amount of money. The kicker is, if most of it's streaming, that's going to be a big turnoff to the bigger schools in the Pac-12, which could be the first domino in terms of Oregon and Washington leaving to the Big Ten. And if that happens, people have estimated that the conference is just going to collapse on itself, and you would get the Big 12 adding the 4 schools. So the Big 12 is saying in these articles they're still open. If you're the Big 12, you want a streaming-heavy deal for the Pac-12. If you're the Pac-12, you want as many games on ESPN as possible. Streaming is not the worst case. It's not the worst thing in the world, but you want, Oregon and Washington to be able to be on ESPN, so that doesn't, force them to look around at the Big Ten if they're sitting there and they're on Apple TV every other week. They're not going to like that, I can assure you it. So we will see what ends up happening when it comes to this entire thing. And, it just seems like we're going in circles. We're really going to have to wait until we get word on what their deal is. Again, the timeline is mid-March. We should hear something on the completion of the Pac-12 TV deal. What is it? Who's it with? Right now, we've heard Apple TV, we've heard Amazon, and we've heard ESPN. Those are the 3 big players. That could certainly change. There might be a 4th. They've talked about a 4th mystery network, but that is the current speculation. So guys, that is going to do it for this video. Make sure you're following me on Twitter. Link to that's always in the description. I'm, of course, the Depressed Ginger. Thank you for watching.